So going into day 2, we're going to want the strongest infantry corps in the north and the probably second strongest in the south. So the way I go through to determine that is I just go through and check the total number of infantry in each corps. And I'm going to end up putting the 3rd Corps in the north and then the 5th Corps in the south. The 3rd Corps is the one that took probably the fewest losses on day 1. The 5th Corps is my most experienced corps, and then the rest just slot in. So we're looking at about little more than 120,000 to about 200,000. Heavily outnumbered in guns, that's going to be a problem. But we're in pretty good shape. I think if you can make it to here with about 100,000 men, you would probably be fine. So first things first, I'm just clearing everything out, and then I'm going to have to go through and set everything up the way I want. It's going to take a little bit, but for me, just clearing everything out is a faster way to do it. It's sort of one of the more complicated deployments because you have 4 deployment zones for corps, like your first slot corps, and then you have 2 for three of your other corps. So I'm putting all infantry in the northwest, except for 2 of the snipers. If you're a little more worried about it, you could just put more infantry up here, but I think I can get away with just having the snipers in position. The snipers are going to help pen in the units coming in from the southwest. The infantry is all going to be in charge of sitting in that fort. That fort's probably where I'm going to take the majority of my losses for this stage of the battle. It's really exposed. There's not really any good terrain around it, and a lot of units come up that way. There's also a ton of cavalry up there, so maneuvering around it is difficult. Like I could bring snipers up there, but they'd be so incredibly vulnerable that I'd just decide to use them in other sections of the battlefield. I'm also trying to bring in basically most of my 20 pounders into this section of the battle and a good chunk of my 24 pounders. I'm really less worried about the southern half of the battle. I'm going to have so many troops down there that it's not going to be a problem. But up here, I really want to have a lot of artillery, though I have to balance that out with I need enough infantry to fill all the areas. It's part of what those snipers are for in the northwest. If I keep those up there, then they keep units from spreading out, and it shortens the lines I actually need to defend with my infantry. Part of the reason I want all the 20 pounders up here is the majority of the Union artillery shows up here. There's only, I guess there's a decent chunk in the south as well, but about half of that is really easy to get to, and the other half is fighting uphill into a fort, so it's not that big a deal, and it really only becomes an issue towards the end of the battle where you can drop so many units on it, it doesn't matter. I'm also bringing a lot of my more experienced 10 pounders in this battle, so I'm going to sort of set up my 20 pounders to the left of the fort to help clear out the artillery on that side, and the 10 pounders to the right of the fort to clear out the artillery on that side. The 20 pounders go on the left because that's going to help hit the artillery by the northwest fort, and that's going to be the weakest part of my line. On the east, you can afford to set up and then fall back, which makes it a lot easier. Fortunately, a lot of these snipers don't have any ammo, so I'm going to have to take measures to get them set up, get them refilled. You need very little to guard this Fort Slocum. If you get lucky, the AI sends almost nothing at it, and you only have to leave a unit or 2 there to garrison it just in case something routes off into the corner and comes after you. You always want to have at least 1 or 2 units sitting in the forts, no matter what you do, just in case some weird unit shows up out of nowhere. You really don't want to, after playing this long, you really don't want to accidentally lose the fort for a few minutes and just not have anything in position to take it back. I don't really want the infantry or the cavalry in this section of the battle, at least not yet. But one of the downsides of discovering that I can't get units killed off and swapping them around, and thus allowing me to swap units around, is I'm stuck with the cavalry in the corps, in my strongest infantry corps. Otherwise, I would have swapped those out for something else. But I can make use of them. The cavalry is eventually useful up here. I'd kind of prefer it to come in the south where I'm going to have more infantry than I really need for a good section of it. Wipe out all the artillery down there, and then bring it up here, because you can't really use the artillery in the initial phase, cavalry in the initial phase up here, just because you have to wait for the infantry to sort of filter down and the artillery to get into positions where you can actually get at it. Also, there's just so much artillery that it sort of takes a while before you can't just throw melee cavalry at it, or, well, you need way more than I have to be able to do it. So you can see I'm mostly setting up, I brought out my 20 pounders, I brought out my 10 pounders, scattering, excuse me, scattering 24 pounders around. I'm going to be moving 24 pounders up to the northwest fort, but I want the infantry up there initially. And then just a bunch of supporting infantry to hold the various sections of the battle I need. You don't get any reinforcements in this section until you go to the... So the way this battle progresses on this day is you have north, south, north, south. It does not combine all the way at the end, but you can transfer units across the border. So after that first southern phase, then I can transfer more stuff up here in case I need it. My initial goal is to hold all 3 forts, and I'm also going to hold these 4 defense lines in the northeast. I found that holding those, even though it sort of extends your line a little bit oddly, it usually causes the AI to bunch up on there as opposed to going to the Fort Slocum, and that means you can start pulling units out of Fort Slocum pretty quickly and send them to other parts of the battle where they're more important, and the AI just tends to, like, once it hits that line in the northeast, it'll just keep sliding west, and then you can, as it clumps up, it lets you flank them and take them out. You don't need a ton in the southwest here, but you do need you do want to have double lines just in case something charges you. Detached skirmishers will mostly do it, but I do put a decent amount of artillery down there. Some 24, like, you just don't want to have stuff to build up too much, because the units down there are going to be in cover. All of my 20 pounders are going to be pretty far forward because usually units don't come down that way. I'll have to back them off eventually if something does come after them, but I want them as far forward as possible so I can start taking out artillery very quickly. A lot of my focus in this phase is based around, if I can get rid of the Union artillery fast enough, then I can save my units in the forts, because even with how good the fortifications are in the forts, once enough that artillery stacks up, it's virtually impossible to keep units in the fortifications. I'm also going to be double stacking generals in the northwest fort and the center fort. That means those units are going to have the extra cover bonus, which doesn't do a whole lot, but for any units that aren't in the fortifications, there'll be an extra bonus. They'll also get the melee bonus and the morale regen. And then I'll have a second general who has the morale resistance reductions, who will also be sitting on top of those forts, and just to maximize the amount of time that your units are going to be able to stay on the wall. And you'll see later in the battle why that becomes sort of a problem. My inexperienced snipers are standing on top of the supply point. They don't need to be moving out immediately. So I will get them resupplied. That first unit I saw is coming in a little more northwesterly than I would have expected. That's why I sort of stopped and ran some units over there. I'm also sending these skirmishers up into the fields. It seems like if you put them up there, it disrupts the AI advance a little bit. Like, they sort of run into it, and those units don't really go after them as hard as you would expect. Like, with all that cavalry up there, they should just run over and just destroy those units, but if they just sort of mill around a lot. So it seems like if you, I guess, intercept the AI a little farther forward from where they're expecting to run into units and stop, then you can sort of break up their advance. Some of the units will charge, others will stand around, and it'll just give you more time to get your counter battery working, get in position, and sort of the longer you can delay that and the more artillery you can get rid of before everything starts stacking up on you, sort of the better things will go. So thankfully those snipers up there in that area don't even really need to be in cover to not get seen. They'll be able to sit there and just wipe out unit after unit after unit in that area. Those guys are almost full, so I can send them over soon. So I'm sending one to the west, one to the east. There's, this is the one battle where I actually wish I had, like if I had, I have 6 good sniper units. If I had 8 or 10, I could make great use of them. Just because there's so much open space in this battle that if I had more access to more sniper units, I could definitely find a use for them. Might get a little, like, more than 8 seems maybe a little questionable, just because you need enough infantry in place to man the lines. But these 2 3-star units are generally going to keep anything from walking up this way. The AI doesn't go directly for the fort, it tries to like cut off the fort, I guess. So I have to sort of maintain a line in the open. And I've also found if I keep units in sort of between those 2 forts, it sort of prevents the AI from going that way quite as much. They don't slide down into that section. So I'm also sliding units up along, like, sort of, I'm trying to cut off the edge of the board there. Like, I don't want any of the cavalry deciding it wants to come down along the side. And eventually I'll swing around and try and take out some of the artillery that's up there. I don't want to push too far because I don't have enough units. Like, I want to keep a lot of units on top of the fort because I'm going to need to swap out units a lot soon. And I just don't have enough to really commit to a full attack up there. Like, if I had more snipers, maybe. I'm still not sure if I'd deploy them there. Really annoyed that that cavalry unit decided to ghost cav its way through there, but thankfully it routes fast enough that it doesn't do too much damage. So one thing to note, where that 19-1 musket is, because of the way that fortification is set up, like the collateral damage radius is really high there. That's why I have to move my 14-pounders back. So if you're not careful, you can really lose a lot of artillery there really easily. That's also the most vulnerable part of that line. It sort of sticks out. It isn't, I don't know. I think it's just because it sticks out and it's sort of a salient, and a lot of units a lot of infantry can fire at it, and it just the unit gets worn down and routes a lot there. So getting to work on unit number 1. And the reason I start with these units up here, just because this is the area that I'm worried about. You know, you could start hitting stuff to the east more, I guess, but I have space to fall back there, and the fort, like Fort Slocum in the south and east, is pretty well defended. So I'm just not as concerned about it. I'm not happy about all this infantry walking down. I don't think the AI always does this. Like, the AI is, depending on exactly how you set things up, it can slide around a lot. Like, sometimes it'll hit the northwest fort really hard. Sometimes it'll hit sometimes if you stop that, it'll hit the middle really hard. And sometimes it'll go harder in the east. This time they're sort of trying to drive straight through the gap in my line, which is actually not a bad idea because I don't have cover there. I don't have fortifications there. I don't have any artillery there. So I'm actually going to have to sit there and just slog it out in the open because I just can't afford to give up that position. If I had more snipers, maybe I could just keep stuff away. Also, there's a lot of artillery coming down the fields in that area. Like, they're really pushing into the area that I'm just weak because I've committed really hard to both of my flanks. That's where I was expecting to run into more, and they saw a relatively weak gap in my line where I don't have artillery support there. Or, I mean, I have all these 20-pounders, but they're all focused on trying to get rid of artillery. But now there's infantry coming in. They're all going to take collateral damage if I leave them there, so I got to pull them all back. I should probably actually be pulling units from the east right now. Like 1 or 2 infantry units should be coming from far east and going west. I was expecting to get charged pretty soon over there. So that's a lot of the challenge of this battle, is figuring out where you really need. Like, you don't have quite enough units to double line everything. Like, so you got to figure out what areas can you go after hard and try and push them back. Like, thankfully the snipers and the 24-pounders have the southwest contained pretty well, but this area in the middle's not looking great. So I'm actually rerouting my 20-pounders to start hitting these units in the flanks to try and get them out of there, because I just don't have the units up there to do it. This is also unfortunate because it happened right when I was trying to push my advantage in the northwest, so I have even fewer units available to try and back anything up. And I can't really pull more from the can't really pull more from the fort, because if that ever gets charged and I lose it, like that position is really hard to take back. So I gotta be real careful what I do up there. So I'm sort of falling back, trying to pull them into a position where I can hit them 2 or 3 on 1. We managed to get rid of that artillery, so that was my main goal up there, just get rid of that. And so now I can start pulling back in the northwest. Debating bringing the snipers up, but I don't really have a good line for it because there's infantry where I'd want to put them. So I decided that I'm safe enough to start going after the artillery again. Maybe I should be shooting Clark. He's right in the middle of the infantry. He's closest to the fort. Once you start shooting at the fort, he's going to do the most damage. But I really, in my counter battery style, I really like to completely eliminate units. I just want to get them off the field. I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best, but I like to get that shatter, get those last 3 or 4 guns gone, and then I can focus on the next one. So we've taken some losses on our 20-pounders because of the collateral damage, because a couple of those units, instead of shooting the fort in the west of them, decided to shoot south, because that's the closest target, which isn't bad. It keeps a little pressure off the fort. Their cavalry's decided to come in a little bit, which is fine. We want to start. We just want to wear all those units down. They ended up in the east. They only ended up deciding to send that 1 infantry unit after us. Thankfully, he's not being too aggressive, and we're able to just pen him off with the snipers over there. But my real goal is to push him out and off, so he goes west, and then I could just get those snipers all on their artillery and start rolling up the entire line. So getting the 10-pounders to work. I probably should adjust them a little bit more. I think they're not firing at the absolute max range, but they're close enough, so I'm just not worrying about it. So this is looking a little better. We took some losses in the open there, but we've sort of pushed them back from that assault, and they aren't really pushing too hard anywhere at the moment. Southwest is looking really good. Got our 2nd artillery unit down, so get rid of him so we stop taking collateral damage, and then we can start helping the fort out. Starting to get on the artillery here. This position is one that I really expected to have to fall back from. Like, that's why I had so much infantry over there, is I had a lot of trouble in my test run, where that area just got charged over and over and over, and between that and the artillery, I had to pull back to the 2nd line. Which ended up putting a lot of pressure on the center fort, because all the artillery moved over and started, I think, I'm not sure if it's flank shots or just concentrated fire, but they started knocking units out of the main fort as well. But this is actually pretty good for me. They've sort of spread out. There's a few of these guys in the east, and then a few going after the fort in the center, but not enough to really worry me too much. Got the 3rd artillery unit. I really need to start working on these, like those 3 units across the middle there that are pretty close is really dangerous, because they're doing a lot of damage to my units in the open, and if they turn on the fort. So I'm already starting to get worried, so I'm starting to send more infantry up there. Notice I pause a lot more in this battle than I do in some of my other ones. It's too much going on. Too easy to get into a bad spot, so it's in the game, use it. Also, as usual, this is all at 2x speed. So I'm starting to send my cavalry up there. I'm getting sick of that infantry unit walking back and forth. I just want to get rid of it. Because once I get rid of it, then I can start pulling more infantry out of the fort down there as well. These 2 units in the fortifications over there are taking a lot of losses, but they're not taking it fast enough to actually drop the morale. Unlike up here, which you can see, we just lost. Everything's charging, and we just lost the units at the same time, so I'm sort of running a couple of those units up. I really want to get rid of some of that artillery, because it's gotten in close enough that it's just devastating those units in the fort. It's a little dangerous, because those 2 units routed out, and I don't really have anything to replace them, and when the artillery and everything, when everything starts clustering, those units in the fortifications will rout really quickly. I'm not sure if it's a bug or if it's just concentrated fire. It didn't seem to work that well for me when I tried it. Though I guess I went into melee pretty quick, so hard to really barely compare. Wipe that unit out, able to start getting on there, and once we get that artillery cleared out, then we'll just roll up the whole line. But you can see how effective those 20-pounders are, just wrecking through units. You can imagine what you can do in the Union campaign where you have access to more 20-pounders. So definitely, at this point, I absolutely should have been pulling infantry from the east already. My line in the northwest is already getting thin. I'm not getting hit too hard in the center, so the backup units in the center fort should be moving west already, and these units in the east should be going. A couple of units should be getting pulled already. If I'd done that, it might have triggered an actual attack in that area. I'm not certain. But you can see I'm just throwing units back into the fortifications up here because they go down really quick. And if the AI ever gets into the fortifications, it's going to be real hard to take them out. I also lose vision every time that happens, which means I have to reset all of my 20-pounders, which is always annoying. But on the outside, east is going really well. It's also worth noting if you lose any of the victory conditions, you will lose the battle. I'm not 100% positive if once the contested timer kicks over, you just automatically lose. I don't remember. But if you've given it up for 40 minutes, you're probably in big trouble anyways. Well, you can see at this point, I can't keep units in the fortifications at all. I really suspect there's some sort of flanking effect going on, because I will put units up there that are at 80-90% morale, and they'll have 2 generals in there. They'll be in the fortification, and they will go into the fortification and rout seconds later. You can see this is also why my 24-pounders are further back. I guess first off, don't put them in the fortification positions. They will just get annihilated. You could put them further into the fort, but they will just take so much collateral damage, especially once stuff routs and starts going back and forth. You'll just lose a bunch of guns. So you can see even as far back as they are, they're taking decent numbers of losses. So I'm just sort of throwing the cavalry forward to draw off enemy fire. There's actually... I'm not sure if I could pull it off. So the one thing you can do to really exploit the AI, especially the artillery, is if you can get a unit up into the northwest somewhere, if you can get that behind their line, you could just have them pop out of cover. All that they can, it will start trying to turn around because they're the closest unit. And then you just walk back into cover and just waste their time rotating all day. It's hard to get them up there, especially with all that cavalry, but if you could pull it off, you could probably solve a lot of your problems that I'm currently having. You can see I've pushed my units forward in the west, and thin my line out there just because I need to distract what's going on because I can't keep units on the fort line. They just rout instantly, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, given how hard it was to get units out of the fort in the first place. Yeah, and I'm still focused on this. I still really haven't pulled many units from the east yet. I really should be. Definitely a mistake. Now the cavalry's starting to get around in the up corner. Like, moving that skirmisher unit forward is a bad idea. On the upside, we've almost wrapped up the southwest entirely. The moving far enough down that the stuff was able to skirt through was not great. Not a good idea. You see that 24-pounder unit that's further to the east has taken, what, 100 losses by now? And it's as far back as it is. So, switching my 20-pounders over to anti-infantry duty, I just need to get those units out of there. But you can see why you really want to have a really strong infantry corps up here, because while a lot of this line is doing all right in the northwest, like wherever the AI decides it's really going to push its attack, you're just gonna units are just gonna fly off the walls, and you're gonna take a lot of losses doing it. No idea how they're capturing the fort there. It's got to be some large radius setup that is just checking the number of men in the area or something like that. But I don't know. Certainly didn't work for me when I had the thing completely surrounded. I didn't take it until I stood on top of it, and not sure why they're able to capture it like this, but won't matter. We'll get it back soon. So I'm trying to pull more units from the center, but can't afford to do it because it's getting hit too. I sent the cavalry in. That might have been a mistake. I was hoping, I clicked through to, I charged the unit in the back, so I was hoping to get all of them into melee and then just tie them up in melee while I inflicted some losses and the snipers killed them. You can see I just took point blank canister and one of those shock units just disintegrated. But we're starting to get some infantry reinforcements up here. We just need to push a little bit more, and if we can stop them from taking fire from multiple sides, we should be fine. The big problem here, again, is that we keep losing that fortification, we keep losing the vision point, I have to retarget the artillery every single time. Also, it's a little hard to see when everything is sped up, but I'm having selection problems because the game engine starts to slow down in this battle. The battle's big enough, it just starts not being able to handle it too well, and the frame rate drops, and there's control input lag. And so you try and do drag select, and clicking on some random infantry unit and telling it to go who knows where. So I made the decision to start moving the 20-pounders up. I really want to get rid of the rest of that artillery, and most of it's far enough over the ridge that you can't actually hit it. There's the terrain. You got to bring them closer so you can actually have a straight line of sight. And once I get them up there, I'll also be able to really wipe out any infantry that's up there as well. See, those musket units are really suffering, but you've almost pushed off the main attack, and from there, then it'll be easy. And you can see this stuff is starting to fall apart. I probably should have pulled more infantry sooner from various sections that weren't really getting hit. We have multiple instances of ghost cavalry, and as far as I can tell, like, that's part of the problem, is the cavalry is counted as behind, like, it's showing up behind my lines and getting flanking fire while still being outside the fort. And, you know, in a situation where I'm having trouble keeping stuff on the walls in the first place, that's just really annoying. That just should not be happening. But if you have enough units up there, you can just keep throwing them up there. The other thing, if you really start getting short, is pull out a bunch of detached skirmishers, just so they have their own morale value. They won't stay on the walls very long, but they will stop everything in place so that they can't walk further into the fort. And so you can see that unit's at 90% morale. It's taking some losses right now, but just collateral damage. See if I keep the camera on it long enough to see. So at this point, I'm starting to move stuff along the board edge because I know there's not much down in the southwest, and I want some extra firepower in the south. This is a little overkill, but figure might as well take advantage of it. And the reason I'm zooming in is that way I can actually get units exactly on the board edge, and they're not covered by the unit bars across the bottom. If you try and click there, it either doesn't work or you don't get them in. You basically need units directly on the board edge. I usually turn them sideways, so like half the unit is sticking off the bottom of the map, and then that almost guarantees they make it over. So as I'm moving units, the AI is sort of sensing that my force strength is changing, and they're pushing in as well. Sort of disrupts my ability to send more reinforcements to the northwest. I guess that was a bad example. That unit's holding a little bit better now. But we got the 20 pounders up there, so now we're going to be able to start taking out the artillery, and then once that's gone, we'll be fine again. Their cavalry is starting to get run down, so they'll be less effective when they teleport behind my lines. And this phase is almost over, but you can see where the second phase is going to be. It's just going to be rolling up the entire line from east to west. Because while we were hard-pressed up north, all those units are getting really small, so they're just not going to have the strength to be able to push through us anymore. And once they all start shattering, then that entire section is going to fall apart. And while the AI does get some reinforcements in the second phase of this, it's nothing in the northwest, so we're going to be fine. So yeah, it was a little close in that phase. If we'd had a few less units or been a little slower in a couple of places, could have gone badly, but made it through all right. And you can see a bunch of those units on the board edge came down. Now we spend our time getting everything set up. I'm going to be sending all my snipers and most of the cavalry to the northern board edge there. We'll be able to sneak a unit. Once the Union forces come down from the northeast, we'll be able to sneak units behind them, get snipers in and around them, get artillery back there, or cavalry back there. And we'll be able to set up a nice little pocket and just wipe out that force, and that'll make the second phase of this part of the battle easier. You don't have to worry about reinforcements coming in from the southern board edge in this phase. You only have to worry about it in the next one. There's a little debate. Like, I'm not really sure what the best option here is. So I'm sending units into the fortifications along the river. I'm not sure if it's better to try and hold the river line the entire phase, or if it's better to fall back to the fort earlier. I've tried both ways. Not super happy about either option. Putting people into the city in case I run out of time and don't get a unit back there, just so the stuff that spawns in can't run through me. Main advantage of bringing those units down from the board edge at this point is I'm just going to have a lot of extra artillery firepower. But my plan is at this point is I'm going to hold the river line for a little bit until they really start stacking up, and then I'll fall back to the fort. While getting them in the river is good, with the fortifications, it's sort of hard to really keep them exactly in the river, so they're going to be partially in the trees and still have decent cover. So after a bit, I'm going to decide to pull back and have them walk out into the open. It's not the greatest defensive position, but at least it gets them out of cover, and then I can start getting at their artillery and stuff. And these forward positions definitely you can't hold after a little bit. They're just, their salients sticking out once like 4 or 5 units start firing at them. You're just not going to recover morale fast enough to keep them alive. So waiting a little bit until I can see more. Happy to let them try and charge me across the river, though. So in the far south, I only put units there just long enough to make sure the AI doesn't decide to go that way, and then I pull them out because the AI won't try and shift down there. My one mistake is I have put 2 mini infantry units into the city. I should be sending more to the east because I don't really have anything. I need multiple units behind this extended line to keep the contain on that side, and I just have nothing there right now. Just completely forget about it. And I have all these units in the center of the town that don't really need to be there yet. So you can see they're starting to move in, completely ignoring the stuff in the northwest, which means I can start sending my units across and then get right into that line of trees and just destroy all the artillery, and then from there you can just push everything up and close that pocket off. So my line in the southwest there didn't work particularly well, so we're going to give it up a little sooner than expected, but it'll be fine. Yeah, definitely don't have enough infantry down here. I'd really like double lines all along this route. So I decided to pull back from the river pretty early, probably. I probably should have kept them a little bit longer. But this is where I finally realized, oh wait, I forgot to put more units over here. This is going to be a bit of a problem. Because if they break through that line there, then I'm going to have a much harder time wrapping them up and destroying them. Also, then I'm going to start taking fire from multiple sides from the fort, and that's going to be problematic. So I managed to pull a supply wagon, which is nice because now we can use that to resupply our snipers. Dismounting the cavalry now that we've got the wagon. Now I'll just hide. Looks like several of those charges stopped. Probably when I detached the skirmishers to form a double line. That's why I try not to use that trick too much. If you detach skirmishers, between detaching skirmishers, dropping the fortifications, and going back into them and reattaching the skirmishers, you could cancel just about any charge in the game in most cases. You need some support usually to make it work, but if you do it enough time, you pause, detach, reattach, do it multiple times, and you can do it 20 or 30 times in the space of a couple seconds. You can make most charges stop. I find using that exploit just takes most of the challenge out of the game. The AI never gets to do what it needs to, so I don't like using it. At least not really intentionally. Sort of the same reason I don't really use the detached skirmishers when in melee to get the 2 versus 1 melee bonus. It works really well, but I think I've used it a few times throughout the course of the campaign. There's a few times where a cavalry unit is about to slip a contain or something. I'm just like, nope, I just don't want to deal with this. Or we'll make use of this. So I'm finding out that the artillery, all the 10-pounders that I put over there, there's a weird, like there's just enough of hill that they can't actually hit anything, which is really annoying. This section where I didn't have enough artillery is a little worrying, but we're making it work. I have that skirmisher going across the river to try and stay down there to keep good vision on stuff. They're shifting a little more into the middle than I kind of like, but on the plus side, that gets them all out in the open. I don't have to worry about fighting them half in the trees. Going to be a little bit problematic when they start going after the fort again, though. So mostly managed to hold the line here. And now the snipers are in the back, so once we get rid of that artillery, that force is doomed. So I'm sort of doing a falling retreat. I'm trying to move the artillery. I'm moving it somewhere else where I'm hoping they'll be able to fire. Maybe I probably should have moved it like north of the fort. Maybe I don't know. Terrain's kind of weird down here, so I'm not really sure why I wasn't expecting to have sightline issues. So because on my test run I didn't bring the extra 10-pounders, so I just didn't have much counter battery artillery down here at all, and I lost a lot of men because of it. Because I just couldn't get to their artillery until the very end. So that's why I brought it this time. And then I discovered, oh wait, I can't actually hit the targets I want to hit. So I started bringing the cavalry down because I was worried about the breakthrough, and that was one of the few units I could get down there quickly. And it turned out I didn't really need it, but I can sneak around their lines from the eastern board edge as well. So I got a pretty good setup here where they're coming after the fort, and when they do, they get flanked. I'm going to sort of pull back along the river line here. Sort of got to be careful where you pull back in the south because you can lose vision pretty easily. So sending the cavalry around, I'm going to get it up, kill that one artillery unit, and we're going to start going after stuff. So this is where you can see there's a little bit of a problem. There's those clumps of trees that I don't really want to give up, but there's no cover around it, so if I send units there, like, they're going to get hit from 3 or 4 different sides, and the artillery can all get to them, so this is where I think I lose the most troops in this section of the battle. It's just trying to hold that line, because it's just, I can't get rid of the artillery well. It's not great defensive positions. Maybe I should have tried to hold the river longer, but if you do that, you have that real long exposed curved section. It's really hard to hold, so that doesn't work well either. Thankfully, they're attacking the southwest quite a bit. That's nice. And some cannons wander after. I'm not sure if it was a routing unit. Yeah, I think I gave the order while it was routing, so they decided to tear off after it. But the other unit didn't go after it, so I'm not really sure what that's about. I have to go back and rewatch it. Presumably user error. So this is me trying to figure out what the heck is this terrain? Where the heck do I have to go to be able to shoot this stupid thing? All the artillery is helpfully clustering in the corner where my cav is going to be able to get it without infantry interference. Realizing I'm not in as good a shape over here as I really want to be, and I have a lot of infantry in positions that aren't super helpful, so I'm sort of starting to swing more units up. These units in the south that are sort of half flanking but not really should probably be going up towards the fort, doing something else more useful. But this isn't too bad. We're getting good flanking fire when they're coming in still, so cavalry are having a field day. putting the carbine cav in there as well, dismounted, so they can... The reason I'm using them is that I can get shots off and keep the units routing without having to stay in melee where the extra units are starting to beat down on the shock units. Oh, right. No, that's why. I think I wanted to go after this. These units up here that are sort of getting near my snipers that I wasn't really a fan of. So I'll route them with the snipers, and then I'll just harry them off with the cavalry. Not doing a good job with moving supply around up here. Again, too much artillery in positions that aren't really, or too much infantry in positions that aren't really necessary. Since that infantry unit routed, I can afford to go after this, though. Yeah, it's just sporadic fire. Even if I lose the artillery here, it's not the end of the world as long as I get rid of the artillery. Which is good, because it just lost the officer and took a bunch of losses there. Was not expecting to find an artillery unit there. That's not great. But we're still in okay shape here. We got a decent amount of units. But you can tell the difference when you have really good artillery support versus a bunch of 10-pounders that can't shoot anything at the range they really want to be. So at this point, I start moving stuff forward. We have about an hour, 40 minutes left. I really want to get that section started to get wrapped up. Send some skirmishers down to try and distract that artillery unit, but you can see my musket unit's already routing over there. Swinging some more units up around for the flank. Trying to get that unit into the trees, so it'll last a little bit longer. He's probably still going to rout. Eventually he'll get far enough away from the artillery that he'll be able to recover again. Not the cleanest wrap down here. Like, I'm going to take more infantry fire than I normally would support, but doesn't matter. Casualties aren't that big a deal. And I just want to get those units gone, because then as soon as you clear that section in the northeast, you free up all those units to come back west and south. A little far forward with this. Again, not the cleanest around. But I've got a bunch of cavalry up there, so they can probably take care of that. It would be more efficient to have those carbine units just stay out of melee and keep firing, but it requires enough micro that it's not worth my time. Just can't afford to spend my time going back there and keeping them exactly where they need to be over and over and over. So we finally got in a position where we can start dealing with that artillery unit. Also got the 10-pounders finally firing on one of them, so starting to get rid of that. So that situation is stabilizing. Situation on the fort isn't great. Taking a lot of losses on those units, but we still have a decent amount there, so we'll be all right. Charges in that case are good, because they're going to be lower on condition. they'll take fire coming in, and then we'll probably be fine in the fortifications, and then they'll route off again. So just helping, just beneficial in that case. Charges from one unit are generally fine. It's when you get hit by 3 or 4 that it's a problem. You can see that's why I didn't really want to give up those woods, because now I have to sort of stand in the open to contest them. But I just couldn't keep a solid line up there. Probably bring those 24-pounders up a little bit. That might have helped some. So starting to pull units back that I think I have the situation handled enough. I want to have them in position at the more or less at the start of the next phase. So we have about an hour left. So I want to try and get them down there when I can. I don't want to be late, because if those units that spawn down there get into the city, then digging them out is a pain in the butt. Pulling those back when I sent the 24-pounders forward is a little inopportune, but trying to run, hold it. So I try to run the musket unit over. It tries to fire. I hold position on it to get it into, so it doesn't waste its time with the animation, and then turn it off. So I successfully drew the fire there and did take the losses on my 24-pounders. Still chasing down that artillery unit. That melee musket unit trying to chase down the artillery unit with musket fire is really not the best use of its time, but whatever, keeping it occupied. Means it's not firing at my fort. So it's a little early. I don't really need to pull them back that quickly, but I don't want to miss the window. So I'm starting to, I think I have the situation in control, so I'm starting to send stuff up to the board edge again so they transfer back. Pulling my back in the south so I don't get flanked when stuff comes in the second phase. Yeah, thankfully those infantry units have been beaten down pretty hard, so not too vulnerable while I'm swapping out of the fort. So only 30 minutes left. Trying to close the noose and solve it. Get that solved. Now when I pull back, I don't really have infantry in the right position, so I got to pull all my counter battery back. Definitely could have played this section a little better, just not really on top of what I need to be. But we've still got enough units. We'll be able to hold it. We could always pull skirmishers if we really needed to. I'm not using them a whole lot. Probably should be, but enough units to manage as is. But now that we've got them sort of shoved into the open there, and now we're in the woods and hitting their flank, now we're not worried about the fort anymore. Don't need the fortifications up there anymore, so just dumping those units into the fort in case something bad happens. Can't really afford to fall back with that unit anymore because there's a bunch of artillery behind me. So I'll have to take the charge. But worked out pretty well. Bring the 24-pounders back. I won't need them for this section anymore. And I'll get them in position to try and deal with the units coming in from the south. don't accidentally click off the map with your general. If he retreats, then I don't think you get him back when the phase switches. But held off the attack. Have vision on that artillery unit that's been bugging us for a while. There we go. That's the first, I guess, second phase done. So we're in decent shape. Most of their units are pretty beat down. A lot of units are going to be coming in the southwest, though, so we got to make sure we have enough in place to solve that. Don't really need much infantry in the east anymore. Everything's just going to keep going west. Don't quite have the artillery wrapped up, but we're getting close. We start bringing infantry up to start pushing stuff west faster than just the snipers can. Not sure how I lost the vision cone there. There's no units anywhere near it. But you can see in the first section here, we whittled down all their infantry units enough that, like, even though units are still riding occasionally, those units are just not outputting quite enough damage to take us out. Though, I say that, and then they capture the fort from being nowhere near it again. I have no idea why they control it at the moment. I have way more troops in that area than they do. Oh, probably the Ghost Cav, because none of my units were directly on top of it, so surprise, it counts as being on top of it's capturing the objective. But cavalry's almost dead, and then we won't care anymore. Starting to throw the infantry forward at this point. Not the greatest use of lives, but you can see there's a lot of stuff coming in from the southwest, so I want to just deal with the situation in the north, and then I can turn everything around. And once I turn those 20-pounders around, everything down there is going to die. Yeah, not a ton going on at this point. We've basically passed the difficult stage of the battle, and this is just going to be a wrap-up. That's a little dangerous, because that unit's been taking a lot. Like, you know, it's down to below 800 men. Probably should have had some backup for it, but mostly because the danger there is that unit gets into melee and decides it's going to rout behind me, and then I have to send a bunch of stuff down to go get rid of it. And if I had a detached skirmisher behind that unit, then it just doesn't happen. But thankfully it decided to rout back the way it came. Thankfully, a lot of those units got stuck on the fortification and didn't really move forward. The unit in that fortification is going to get wrecked, but it'll last long enough. And we got some extra units coming down, so we should be safe. Not quite to the point where I can just send everything forward. I'm going to move the 20-pounders. I guess, I changed my mind. Thought about going after that artillery and then decided I'll just deal with it with the infantry, and at the 20-pounders I'll turn around and deal with the bigger threat in the southwest, because the northern fort's safe now. Just gotta get lined up in a wide enough arc that we can come in and hit anything with 4 or 5 units, and then that section will be gone. Backing up a little bit, no need to take fire from that 3-star artillery. So I can see I'm having trouble keeping units in that fortification, but still mostly keeping their line where I need it to be. Once I get rid of that artillery, then I should be fine again. Swinging some extra units out to extend my line. Probably could have just shifted everything over a slot, but more clicks. See, these units all take quite a few losses, but still big enough to do what they need to do. Enemy units tend to be, in general, smaller at this point. More canister and point-blank range. That's not great, but they won't get another try at it. I think that unit must have routed from the southwest, and I have to bring some infantry over to deal with it. So I move the snipers down to try and deal with the larger mass of the larger mass of infantry. So now we can just start moving in division-wide arcs. Yeah, you can see this, the attack in the southwest is basically done. They have some larger units down there still, but not to do a whole lot. I have to be a little bit careful. Some of these units are pretty small, so running into 3-star brigades in the woods is a little dangerous, but we'll just bring 4 or 5 over and they'll kick them out. Yeah, just the same thing we've been doing all campaign. We've broken the enemy, just have to deal with the rest of them. And again, if you were more hard-pressed and your units were in worse shape than mine at this point, then absolutely just sit in the fortifications and, you know, let those infantry units come forward if they're going to try, but you don't have to go out and get them. They're not going to help in the last phase or anything. It is nice to be able to go out. It's much easier to get rid of the artillery when you go out there like that, though. So. If you're not playing the UI mod, this artillery is going to be much less dangerous than it was to me. primarily because these units are all oversized and, well, larger than 14 guns, so they're going to be doing far less damage than they really should be if you're playing the base game. So in that case, you probably don't have to prioritize the counter battery fire nearly as much as I did. You can just ignore a lot of the artillery and they won't do a whole lot. But if you are playing the UI mod, there'll be a concern. I did much better than I in this time around. I think I took, I think it was about 25,000 casualties on day one, and that easily could have gone up another 10 to 20k if you're a little bit less efficient about taking those forts and knocking out the artillery. I've definitely seen cases where you'll have multiple, you'll have as many as 10 or 20 Union artillery units with 15, 2,000 kills, or 1,500, 2,000 kills, something like that, which is more the numbers you're used to seeing out of player artillery than AI artillery. But if you have to walk into canister range, that's what happens. But we did pretty well this time around with not having to deal with that. So we got that lone cavalry unit going over there. I'm a little worried about that one fort, but I do have a unit there, so it should be all right. And basically just walking the infantry forward at this point. Not worried about casualties anymore, just want to get it over with. Thought that cavalry unit might decide to go after the fort or something, where I don't have really anything, but it just decides to sit there. Not really sure what that's about, but useful for me. So sending those all down towards the board edge. Hour left. Questionable if they'll get there, but might as well. Even if they don't, I don't need them, but they'll just make things easier. So yeah, that fortification down there is apparently spectacular. Like, you can stack 4 or 5 units up down there, and that one I got on the very bottom board edge just doesn't take damage, I guess. I'm not really sure, but it's super strong. Or just the AI doesn't manage to get enough fire on it or something. I don't remember exactly. I don't know if I check, but I'm pretty sure that infantry unit that's been sitting there all battle probably has close to the most kills for any infantry. Yeah, we're at 5,000 kills. That's pretty ridiculous. All from just sitting in that fortification all battle. I guess they came out of it to go south a little bit, but... Just trying to see if I can get rid of that cavalry unit. Decide to charge, see if I can get some more surrenders. Which I guess is bad for my infantry kill count, if you're not counting, because you don't know. There's no way to tell in the post-battle reports, or I guess no way to tell in the post-campaign reports if you have, if the captured units were infantry or not. But we're still going to clear the 1,000,000 mark for infantry kills by a wide margin, so not really an issue. Yes, it's the one battle where I complain about getting surrenders. So sending a few units to the fort just in case doesn't prove necessary. But you can see all this stuff coming in. We didn't quite finish wiping stuff out in the east, but we have a few units in position, so it'll be fine. And then we have all this stuff coming down, so just a matter of time for those forces down there. Oh, I guess it decided it was day again. So just setting up a line in the city, just to make sure nothing slips past me. So you can see I'm already in position. Both sets of reinforcements that spawn in aren't going to do anything to me. You were still forward in the... I assume that was a real fun surprise if you didn't know it was coming. Did not realize that those units were coming quite so far from the east. I thought they came, I thought they started a little further west, so well, that deployment wasn't good. But they shot my worst sniper unit, so no big loss. So just moving everything forward at this point. I think I've got most of the artillery except for the stuff in the south. My goal is to sort of, like, you can see I don't have good vision outside of the town. And there's a couple artilleries down there, units down there, so I'm just going to send the snipers down and start shooting those units from behind, and that'll take care of it. Set the skirmishers forward to just do some damage to that artillery, back them up a little bit. Probably lose the skirmishers, but no big loss. And I walk more snipers into an infantry unit because I'm just not paying attention to what's going on down here at all. I'm not sure what that unit's doing. I'm not sure what, Sanderson? I'm not sure why he's walking east. He's supposed to be walking northwest, but who knows? Probably should have positioned my infantry a little more towards the fort so they tried to go further west. Just because then it's really easy to trap them against the edge. But we'll just send the cavalry in. Yeah, not paying a whole lot of attention with those units, just at this point I just want the battle to be over with. Lose some more 24 pounders, because again, just not really paying enough attention. Not really should have set those units forward slower, but I'm gonna go recover my men. Starting to get a lot of surrenders at this point because these units are just pretty much gone. One thing you can do if you're really pressed and you manage to get some surrenders is you can walk surrenders units out in front of your own to block enemy fire. They won't. They'll block line of sight, and the enemy won't be able to fire at their own surrendered units. Just got to be careful they don't get recaptured, otherwise that can go badly. It's another one of those bugs that well, I'll call it an exploit that I just don't really. I don't think it's necessary. I'll do it with my general, but there's risk of losing him. Got a fun little corner scrum going. But infantry's finally getting down here, and once they do, this will be over with. Would have been better not to get pushed into get them pushed into the city there, but our units are coming over from the east and won't be a problem. Lots of captures. This So I don't want the supply wagon, so just sending everything in. Really inefficient play, but doesn't matter at this point. Snipers could have some fun at melee. Units. Those last couple of units really don't want to surrender, apparently. Also, this is why you don't just mass charge like that, because then all your units are exhausted, and you usually don't actually get into melee with 3/4 of them. And just one guy left. There we go, one last surrender. And that's the Confederate campaign. So we took, let's see, 44, 45, 46k losses, so probably a little around 9k in medicine back. And then we killed off, let's see, what, 190, that's quite a bit. I think it's like 240, something like that. If you add it all together, 230. So probably about a 1 to 5 ratio, maybe 1 to 6 with medicine included. Debatable if you count that. It technically applies, but you never go back to camp. You don't get to see your units, so who knows. But yeah, that's the Battle of Washington. Definitely one of the harder battles in the game. That second phase, trying to hold that fort up there, is unpleasant. See, they had pretty good weapons. Some scoped rifles in there. Thankfully, not more skirmishers. Lost. Apparently, I got most of my James unit killed at some point. I don't know when that happened, but probably somewhere in the southwest. Just probably collateral damage or something. Lost quite a few officers. More promotions. Just mostly looking to find myself at this point, and then I realized that because I got wounded on the first day, it will get cleared out, and technically the unit's alive again. So won't get to find my own. Tombstone isn't quite right, but figured I'd check. And figured I'd take a look and see what we ran up against. Definitely, those are much better numbers for the artillery, in my opinion. Still pretty high. You see, they did a lot of damage, and if you don't get rid of them, you can see why those numbers would go up quite a bit. But did pretty well. Definitely mitigated a lot of the problems that I ran into the first time around. Certainly could do better. You can always improve this, but usually I usually don't even play to this station of the campaign. I just lose interest after Cold Harbor. Pretty good kill numbers there. Unsurprisingly, 24-pounder is definitely up there. There's that one infantry unit that was sitting down there. 6,000 kills. That's pretty impressive. Don't usually see that outside of snipers. Snipers clearly had a field day. Had another, that elite rifle unit. 4K kills, pretty good. Yeah, a couple of those guys must have been set up in positions where they just got to fire at stuff all day long, and that was it. Higher casualties than usual, but doesn't matter. And really good performances out of most of them. And our massive surrendered units at the bottom. That's quite a lot of them. That's a little surprising. Way to give me my good surrender luck when it doesn't matter game. The cleanup phase for this loading screen takes forever, so we're going to skip most of it. Bunch of medals. Joy. And there we go, our final statistics. So yeah, what, 235,000 casualties or so for the entire campaign. If we subtract off Allied units, I think it was around 40,000 total. Another 35,000 back from medicine or so. So under 200,000 casualties for the whole campaign. I will do a short follow-up video where I go into some statistics a bit more. And then we also, killed more than 1 million infantry. Little over 10,000 artillery, 50,000 cavalry, 30,000 captured. So yeah, altogether that's what 1,200,000, something like that. It's going to end up with a total kill ratio of around 5-1 if you count everything I lost, and if you only count the troops that were mine and subtract medicine and all that, then it's closer to about 6.5-1. So pretty good ratio for legendary. I'm pretty happy with that. I think I could have gone if I had switched back to playing the complete base game, where the size factors and stuff kicked in. I think I could have gotten a much better ratio. But I just can't force myself to play that version anymore. It's fine, but there's just enough bugs and stuff that there's enough quality of life stuff in the mod that definitely just want to use that. So hopefully this will have provided a good reference of one way to get through the legendary Confederate campaign. It's something that a lot of people have struggled with, but just wanted to show that a lot of battles can be turned very easy if you just take the right approach. So thanks for everyone who's stuck with me the whole way. Took a little bit longer to get through all this than I thought. I will probably be doing some rebalance mod content next. I probably won't do a full campaign, but wanted to do at least an introductory guide going through Shiloh, and I will not sure which side I'll do first. I might do Confederate first just to get myself back into it a little bit before going into the wonderful meat grinder that is the Union start. But again, thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed.